Hey guys, welcome back to How to 911. Obviously, you can see we have another special guest, but we'll get to that into a second. I am Sammy.
I'm Erica.
And today we're going to be talking about something that I don't think is very understood when it comes to 911 or first responders or just, I guess, in general.
Yeah.
Sometimes, so that's going to be PTSD. And I'm gonna let Erica take over this next part.
All right. Well, we have Ryan Dedmon with us. He's a retired police dispatcher, and he has a master's in forensic psychology. Very impressive. So Ryan, if you would please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to the position that you're in, because you're also with the 911 Training Institute.
Right. So I served about 12 years in local law enforcement in Southern California, which is where I live. And a majority of those years was working as a dispatcher at a local police department. I worked for the city of Anaheim, home to Disneyland, Angels baseball, and Ducks hockey. So it was a very big, dynamic city, and I got to do lots of cool stuff there during my years of service with that agency. And I retired in 2013, and after retiring, I had the opportunity to meet Jim Marshall, who is the director of the 911 Training Institute. And after learning about some of the work he was doing to help dispatchers optimize their overall health and well-being and also their performance at work, I was like, I am all in with this. Like, how do I get involved, and how can I help volunteer or contribute or work with you? Like, whatever, I will do anything, because what he was working on addressed a lot of the things that I experienced when I was a dispatcher, and no one talked to me about any of that stuff. And we didn't have the tools back then, I don't think, to really help dispatchers address those things. So when I found out that's what he was doing, I said, I gotta be a part of this. And ever since, he has not been able to get rid of me. So, he is the director of the 911 Training Institute. So we are a small consulting firm that provides various types of training and consulting services to 911 agencies. And so we teach a lot of training classes. We work with agencies to build peer support teams, and we show up at conferences for, like, APCO and NINA, and we like to sing and dance and do different types of speaking engagements and meet dispatchers where they're at, and just help them be better dispatchers, but help them be better people.
Awesome.
I really like that.
That's really good. Yeah. And we get to interview Jim Marshall in a few days. So
I'm first.
Yes, you are.
I hardly ever beat this man at anything. So
really?
Mark this day.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So PTSD, what is that? Describe what that is, and then why is it important to dispatchers, or why should we know about it?
That is such a loaded question.
We have
Let's
so
start
much time.
unloading. Let's get a suitcase, open it up, and just one at a time.
So how about we do this then? Since you've invited Jim and he's going to be appearing on your show in a week or two, I will reserve for him to talk a lot about the psychology of the science behind it. And so I'll try to dummy it down for us happy dispatchers. How about that?
That sounds good.
Okay. So post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a traumatic event or experience you have in life. And as a result, you have some trouble processing that trauma. And the trouble processing can manifest itself in lots of different ways, physically, cognitively, mentally, emotionally, behaviorally. And so the way that trauma and stress can manifest itself looks different in each of us. So, from a mental health perspective, what Jim will talk about, there's different types of criteria that has to be specifically met in order for you to receive a diagnosis of PTSD from either a psychologist or psychiatrist, therapist, or your medical doctor. So I'll let him talk about that. But the way that presents itself in dispatchers is, people don't call 911 when they're having a good day, right? So we talk to people when they're having the worst day of their life more often than not. And as a result of us talking with them, or as a result of us talking with our field responders via radio who experienced something traumatic like a vehicle pursuit, a foot pursuit, officer involved shooting, a major structure fire, something like that, we can vicariously experience that traumatic event, even though we're sitting in the safety of a communication center. So, that can have, ultimately, it's possible it could have devastating effects on your overall well-being, right? So your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, like everything that you are as a person can be impacted by a traumatic event you experience. And so the troubling thing about dispatch is that, okay, well, we don't just experience one. Because what's the likelihood that you could experience multiple in even just a single shift, right? You don't know, because you don't know what's on the other end of that 911 line when you hit that answer button. It's like, it's go time, and whatever is presented to you and thrown at you, like, you roll with it, and we work with it, and then we handle it, and we think, okay, let me take a minute. But you don't have a minute, because your 911 lines are lighting up like a Christmas tree, and you got to go on to answer the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And oh, by the way, that's just your Monday at work, right? So now you got to come back, and days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and months turn into years. And so what we want to do is in the last few years, researchers pioneering this effort like Dr. Michelle Lilly have done some research and found that, in one of her studies, nearly 24% of dispatchers in that study presented strong enough symptoms that would qualify them for a possible PTSD diagnosis. 24%, like 24%, that's a lot. So if you take that statistic and then apply it to your communication center, just as a generic principle, like 24% of the dispatchers in my comm center might qualify for a PTSD diagnosis. Like, that's radical. That's radically significant. So what we want to do now is shift our focus when we look at this kind of thing, because in the past, I think we all thought like, oh, PTSD, like most people have heard that 4-letter acronym and we think, ooh, that's scary. Well, yes. However, now we know that there are things that you can strategically do in life to implement lifestyle changes that will boost your immunity, if you will, and that's what we call resilience. So if we can give you skills in life to help make you more resilient, now when you are presented with those types of traumatic events, it's not to say that they will have zero impact, but now you can utilize the skills that you've learned in order to mitigate all of those negative symptoms that Jim can talk about later that can have devastating impacts on your overall well-being and your health.
You want to divulge any of those lifestyle changes?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing we try to do is clarify any misconceptions that people have about PTSD. So I know when I was a dispatcher, even with my education in psychology, I always thought, okay, like PTSD, right? This is people like returning home from Afghanistan after seeing like very ugly things that there's no way I could relate to their experience in warfare, right? That is PTSD. And when I went through some counseling and therapy myself after I retired, and the therapist I was seeing said, yeah, you have PTSD. I was like, wait, what? how do I have PTSD? Like, all I did was sit in a comm center and talk to people on the phone. Like, I don't, no, you got to be mistaken. Like, there's no way that could be PTSD. You know, my Humvee didn't just get blown up by a roadside bomb. I haven't seen body parts like laying everywhere. I haven't been right next to a comrade who's been shot, or, you know, all of these other devastating things that we stereotypically associate with, you know, traumas of war. Well, it's more complicated, and it's more simple than that, because even us as dispatchers plugged into a computer, sitting in a comm center, who are physically safe, we still experience the same trauma that people who call 911 are reporting. We still experience the same trauma that our peace officers and firefighters and EMS professionals experience, you know, where they're on the roadside of a highway, you know, doing CPR in progress. Like, we are right there, even though we aren't right there, right? You feel me? So what we try to do is we try to clarify some of these misconceptions and let dispatchers know that the qualitative experience that they had either over the phone or over the radio, like, yes, that is traumatic. And it is okay to stand up and say, like, yes, that was traumatic for me. And yes, I'm having a hard time in coping with some of the stuff. Okay, great. Step number one, right? Let's acknowledge and validate that, because in the past, no one has really done that for dispatchers. Right? We have traditionally lived by the, like, suck it up emotional code. We've had that attitude of we're dispatchers, we're the strong type, nothing gets to us, like 911 calls, like, I got this, right? And I'm going to answer more and answer more and answer more, and nothing ever phases up. And we've heard it all. Like, there is nothing that could be said over the phone or the radio that would ever surprise me anymore, and I'm not affected by any of it. Okay, we need to shift away from that attitude, that mindset, and that emotional code now, and say, you know what? This stuff is hard. And sometimes, like, it's a tough day at work to serve as a dispatcher. And you know what? That's okay. And it's okay to come home and be like, I had a day at work. And now we try to give dispatchers some skills in educating them about what that can look like, so that they can then adapt and insert lifestyle changes as they feel appropriate in order to mitigate those impacts, so that we don't turn to the bottle, so that we don't turn to pills, so that we don't turn to other addictive habits that we have used as coping mechanisms in the past that aren't good. They're not healthy. So that's what we try to do.
That's great. I had PTSD too a few years ago, and it's kind of the same thing when you said, when you were diagnosed, it's like, wait, me? I have what now? So, and I need to do what? And we talked about it in another podcast, and I actually got to write a little blog for your, or an article for your blog about it, and how I found
your story in an article that's posted on our blog, right? So if people, if your viewers, like, visit our website and check out the blog, they can find your personal story.
Yeah, and which was, sharing it with you was easy, but then sharing it with my coworkers, I was like, oh, it was a little difficult for them to really know about it, because I'll share it, like Sami knows about it. Sami got to take my class too, so it's different when it's for everyone, but to hear that diagnosis is like, it shifts your mindset a little bit and makes you think about things differently. And the resiliency part, where, like, I don't think I've had anything too traumatic these past few years since that diagnosis, but the other day I had a call with an elderly gentleman, and he found his wife who was deceased, and his reaction made me have a reaction that I don't normally have. And I thought, I'm going to be fine, it'll be okay. And I could tell that next call that I took, I was not fine, I was not okay, and usually I would have pushed through, and I just got up and I told my partners, I need a second. And I went and I cried in the museum. I sat on some stairs. I made sure that I let myself feel what I needed to feel for this person that I've never met and probably will never meet. And even now thinking about it, it kind of getting teary-eyed, which I don't cry, so this is fun. But thinking about what he's gone through and how that could have been a family member of mine, and how I got to share that really intimate moment with him. And I was that first person that found out what happened to his wife. So letting myself acknowledge that, feel that, and then process it, and then be able to let it go. And I was able to go back to work and be a successful partner, or a good partner, rather than a cranky one who was annoyed at what I was feeling, how I was feeling, and why I was feeling what I was feeling.
Right.
So I guess really what I'm saying is it's a testament to resiliency and teaching yourself how to handle things that we've forgotten how to handle as adults. I've been told how to handle as adults. So,
well, you know what?
I really appreciate it.
I'm proud of you, because it's dispatchers like you who are veteran with several years of service, right? You have been around the block a few times, and you got the stories to prove it. And when our younger generation of dispatchers working alongside you now see you handle it that way, that's going to change it for them. And they're going to know that, you know what, like, if Erica can do this, then you know what, like, it's okay for me to do this as well. And that ultimately is going to help optimize their longevity in serving as a dispatcher. Now you're helping mold their mindset as well, so that, you know, they don't feel burned out after 3 years, 5 years, and want to quit and take this job and shove it, because you've helped change their attitude about how we perceive this stuff and how we respond to it. So thank you for being a shining example. That is what we hope to achieve right there. That is what we hope to achieve.
That's good. And it's funny how it's, you said you retired in 2013 and I started in 2007. So in my 13 years, it's grown from the suck it up, brush it off, go, you know, we don't need to hear about it, don't talk about it, to hopefully Sami and all the people in her generation being able to grow up in this culture where it's acceptable. And it's nice to see in the span of the few years that it's changed and that it can change.
Oh, Sam, I am. We love our little baby dispatchers. Hey, but like, here's the thing, like, when you became a dispatcher, Sami, like, you probably had the goal of like making this a lifelong career.
Yeah.
I mean, few people want to become a dispatcher and just be like, oh, I'm just going to do this for a couple of years, see how it goes, and then move on. A majority of people who enter the 911 family hope to serve for 20, 30 years. And so, I mean, I hope that like having a person like Erica as a partner and as a friend, not just in the comm center, but also in your adventure here with How to 911, like that helps you lead your generation of dispatchers. Because guess what? I mean, no offense, Erica, but like, she ain't going to be filling that seat forever in your comm center. Like, one day you're going to be that leader. So, you know, and this is what is different for Erica and I, because I think when Erica and I started our careers long ago, we looked at the older generation of dispatchers before us, and oh man, that was just a very different attitude and mindset. And from the very beginning, like from the minute you entered a training, like it was just different than the way we do it now. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay, because I think once upon a time, it served that generation of dispatchers well. Maybe it did. But I think what we've come to realize is that it's not going to serve us well today. And then moving forward in the future, especially with tools like Next Gen 911 and creative ways on how that technology then gets implemented into the ways that we do our jobs, like, you may be seeing things and hearing things now that, you know, dispatchers in the past never did. And so we're almost at a fork in the road where we get to decide, right? How are we going to proceed in talking about this kind of stuff? Are we gonna cling to that old suck it up buttercup attitude, or like, do we need to do things different?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, you saying that it serves the older generation well, how they handled it, and thinking about all of the technology and social things going on in the past 20, 30 years. So much has changed culturally in and out of the dispatch center. So it stands to reason that we need to change with it as well. It's a good point.
And isn't that's the nature of public safety? I mean, all forms of public safety. Just look at some of the challenges that law enforcement is experiencing right now today. We didn't experience this 10 years ago, certainly not 20 or 30 years ago. And I think, and that's okay. So law enforcement, fire service, EMS, all of these fields within public safety adapt to the needs of society in order to provide the best quality care and service to our communities. 911 is no different. So we also have to adapt. Now, it's not just adapting in the technical way that we do our job, it's also adapting in the way that we embrace what we do.
That's true. Definitely a mindset difference.
Most definitely. Certainly.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I had a question here that when you were talking, what can I do as a partner to help my other partners as far as resiliency? But we touched on a little bit, I guess, being an example, but are there other things that I can do to support my partners as far as like awareness of PTSD or mental health or anything that you'd suggest?
I think the very first thing you can do as a partner is just be a good person. That's it. I mean, that's where it starts. Plain and simple. No training required. It's just be a good person. And we have to remember that this job affects each of us differently based on who we are, our values and belief systems, and then our own personal experiences in life. So I'll give you an example. Erica, you got kids?
No.
You're not helping my example. Okay.
I have nephews?
I'm working in a comm center, and my partner is working right at the console next to me. I take a 911 call of a reporting party who's following a drunk driver. Drunk DUI, or whatever it's called in your state. I experience an emotional reaction after handling that call. My partner looks over at me and is like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, it was just a DUI. Like, I mean, on the grand scale of things, like, that's not exactly a critical incident. Why does it look like you're a hot mess right now? And then I share that my grandfather was killed by a drunk driver in the middle of the day, in the middle of the afternoon, 2 p.m., broad daylight, no weather problems, no roadway problems, drunk driver, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, driving nearly 3 times the legal limit in the state of California. Oh, and guess what? No insurance, no vehicle registration, and with outstanding warrants for, guess what? DUI. Now you can see then how that personal experience in my life makes a call like driving under the influence much more significant to me compared to a person who's never lost a friend, family member, or loved one to an incident like that. Okay. If you had kids, I handled these calls all the time. Baby not breathing. Okay, Not to sound desensitized, but that was kind of just another call for me because, you know, I'm not married and I don't have any kids. So in my mind, I'm not going through that, oh my gosh, this is so traumatic because I just picture that. What if that were my baby? Well, I don't have that reaction because I don't have that experience in life. I don't have that relation. And yet my partner, who's got 4 kids, she's going crazy and she's a hot mess after that call because that's all she's thinking about is her own babies, right? Now, here's the challenge. Her experiencing that after her call versus me experiencing that after my call, does that make either one of us any less of a dispatcher? And the answer is no, of course not. That's why each of us are impacted differently by these different calls that we handle, and that's okay. So the first thing that we got to do in our comm centers to help support our colleagues is, one, just to acknowledge and then validate that, hey, whatever you're experiencing right now, like, that's okay. Like you said, Erica, like, it's okay to not be okay. And it doesn't matter if it was a critical incident like a shooting that just occurred or a cat stuck in a tree. If that causes you to have an emotional reaction, then that's okay. Like, let's talk about it, and I'm here to support you with whatever you need and however I can. In the past, we haven't done that. We haven't done that. Because if I were working next to you, Erica, and I had you, and I saw you have some type of emotional reaction after that call that you just handled, I'd be like, "What's wrong with you, Erica? Like, get your shit together. Like, there's other lines ringing. Come on, girl. Like, suck it up. Get back in here with me. Don't leave the rest of us hanging to do all of this work by ourselves, right?" And we know that, okay, like, that's not setting Erica up for success in processing this event for her. One, as an individual, but then that's also not setting up our comm center as an entity for success either regarding our operations. And so I think the easiest thing, and the first and easiest thing we need to do to support our people is to acknowledge and validate that these calls that we handle, hey, they're tough. And sometimes they're tougher on each of us, and that presents itself differently and uniquely due to the individual people that we are, because we're not all the same person. If we are, we would be robots, and we wouldn't need dispatchers because it would be a computer automated system, right? But thankfully, I mean, the best part of the 911 emergency system is the human dispatcher that's handling those calls. And that human dispatcher brings with them the totality of the human experience, which means that, you know what, sometimes I got tough days at work. Sometimes I got bad days at work. Sometimes things make me sad. Sometimes things make me depressed. Sometimes things make me angry. And you know what? That's okay. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the human species. Mm-hmm. Right? So taking all of that in mind, it requires no training. I mean, you don't have to spend money on training or a sophisticated software program or anything like that. I think it first starts with just remembering that for our partners, we acknowledge and we validate that, yeah, you know what, you handled a tough call, that's okay. I'm here for you with whatever you need. Yeah. Step one.
And I think the not knowing, like, I don't know everything about Sami, about what could trigger her, what could be that one thing. It definitely, like cats, yes, like me too. But we don't know everything about the people that we work with. So something that came to mind when you were describing that is making sure, if you have the luxury, we're a small enough agency where we can talk to each other and get to know each other, so we can find out things if something did happen. If you, I mean, I hope you say, or if you have kids, you bring that up pretty early in the conversation. It's kind of weird a few years in, and be like, oh, you have kids? I'm sorry about that. Not sorry about the kids, but sorry about that call. Maybe about the kids. I don't know. However you feel about kids. But being able to chat with them and learn about them, and understanding that you're not going to know everything, and who knows what's going to trigger them. And yeah, that was it. Just being able to talk to them and get to know them if you're able to.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Great. Okay, anything else on that? Anything besides being a good human and that we can do to make our partners successful?
Well, yeah, there's lots of other things, but I think that's the first and that's the easiest.
Okay.
Other things would include like official training, training like, you know, we deliver at the 911 Training Institute, training like you deliver. And it's educating our folks on what this kind of stuff does. You know, burnout, compassion fatigue, acute stress, secondary traumatic stress, post-traumatic stress. It's providing them with education about this stuff, because knowing is half the battle, right? So if they know the signs to look for, and it's not in any type of official capacity, but it's just to give them knowledge about, hey, that looks like it might be a red flag to me. And I don't know for sure, but I know when my little bell goes off in my head about red flags that I see, that maybe I either need to check in or do a notification. And that's it. So it's not like, you know, we're trying to train dispatchers to be mental health professionals to recognize specific criteria for a diagnosis. No, not at all. What we do want to do is give dispatchers the knowledge to recognize that, you know what, that ain't right. You know what, I haven't slept in 3 days. That's a red flag. That's not right. And that might tell me that maybe I need a little help. Aside from like official training, the next step would be like programs like peer support teams and comprehensive stress management wellness programs at our agency, employee assistance programs, bridging to other professional resources, healthcare providers, mental health providers, whatever the need is. So, you know, just being a happy, good human is step one. And then there's other things that we can do in a more official capacity to help optimize not just our individual wellness as dispatchers, but then also our operations as a comm center. Do you think an agency that has a peer support team is more apt and able to provide service to their employees compared to an agency that does not have a peer support team?
Definitely. I think like that, if you have a culture of wanting to help, you're able to do that easier when it's time.
Right. And isn't that the C word in 911 that we've been trying to change for so long? The culture of 911. Well said, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. All right. Going back to PTSD very quickly, is it for dispatchers, could it be a cumulative thing or just one event, or could it be both? That if a PTSD could occur?
D, all of the above.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, that was too easy for you.
Okay, so in the past, I think we've traditionally seen that, okay, this is going to be one major event, and this event was basically hell on earth that you experienced as some type of critical incident, high priority call that was reported to you. Shots fired, active shooter, natural disaster. Like, I mean, think of the worst of the worst of the worst. That's PTSD. Well, we know that, yes, that's true. There's also, to your point, the accumulation of. And so now it's like, it's not just that one event, it's the accumulation of 10 years of service as a dispatcher. So that's why it's yes, it can be both.
Right. And then coming back into resiliency, and if hopefully having the resilient mindset, the 10 years cumulative you can work with it if you're resilient. Why do we look so like our lighting got different there?
I think the sun's starting to play tricks on us.
Ooh, tricky. Okay.
Colorado.
Right, the sun.
It's like a solar eclipse there now.
That's right. Okay. I think I've touched on everything that I would have wanted to bring up. Sami, do you have any?
Oh, we're gonna have Sami talk now.
Yeah, I'm so not good with the spotlight. I guess my thing that I want people to really understand is like how does it work for dispatchers? Because I just want people to understand, like, just because we're not there doesn't mean that we can't experience the same thing. So maybe like break down like what the difference is for PTSD for like first responders because they're there, and then the wartime, and then us with the non-seeing it portion.
How about I just tell you my personal experience?
Oh, I love it.
When the three of us are working together in the comm center and we answer 911 calls, would you agree that don't we always formulate this picture in our mind of what is going on? And isn't that picture always the worst case scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do that?
Overactive imaginations.
Yeah.
Just, or perfectly active human.
Because like our callers are explaining to us the worst case scenario of that situation. And so that's just what we're building up in our heads.
Yes. But also, if you were not operating on a worst case scenario basis, you're doing your callers a disservice, right? Because now we're basically diminishing whatever they're reporting to us. So we imagine worst case scenario, and that helps us do our job better. That helps our responders respond better until they get on scene and take care of whatever is being reported to us. The problem is sometimes that worst case scenario, that picture that we have formulated in our head, we do that in order to help our brains process what is being reported to us. And that's, again, welcome to the human species. Okay, so that is basically you feeling stressed in the moment, and then your brain trying to process what is being reported to you. As a result, you formulate this picture, this movie, if you will, of, okay, this is what's going on based on what is being reported to me. The problem is that sometimes that movie that we create in our mind is not always an accurate portrayal of what is actually occurring. And we don't have a way, as dispatchers in a comm center, as the very first responder, we don't have a way of differentiating that because there's nothing to measure it against. See, when our police officers and firefighters arrive on scene, you know, and they click on the radio and be like, you know what, cancel the follow, it's just a blah, 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 blah. And we're like, now we know. But in the moment, while still on the phone, there's no way for you to do that. There's no way for you to get an accurate representation because you are solely relying on the reporting party who is sharing this with you. And that reporting party, they might be jacked up too, because guess what? They are in the middle of a very stressful situation and they might be having trouble processing it. And then when they're talking to you on the phone and they're having a hard time describing what's actually happening. Am I the only dispatcher who's talked to callers like this? Okay, no, thank you. Like, can I get an amen? Jeez Louise, you guys are killing me. So as a result, this is why it's tough for dispatchers, Sami, right? Is because we are the very first responder and we are on scene. And isn't this what we're fighting for in many of our states now, reference the reclassification of dispatchers as a first responder, as opposed to Sami just talks on the phone. And she's no different talking on the phone than a clerical worker. Well, this is the difference. This is what, and you know, this is the education that we're now trying to share with the general public about the actual duties and responsibilities that we have as dispatchers. And so then related to PTSD, bringing it back around, you know, this is what it looks like. Does that make sense? Sami?
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right, I think we're good, Ryan. Anything else you want to throw out there about anything related to PTSD and dispatchers or?
Yeah. How about I share a quick analogy, a story with you?
I
Okay.
love stories.
Okay. So, Colorado, you got some trees in Colorado.
A few.
Just a couple.
Do you know anything about the California coastal redwood tree? Do you know anything about redwood trees?
They're huge.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, the California coastal redwood tree is the tallest tree on planet Earth. It grows to a height of just over 400 feet. 400 feet. There's a tree that's 400 feet tall. That's 100 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty. There's a tree 100 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty. Think about that for a moment. And you would think that a tree that size would need a root system that just grew so deep into the earth, like wrapping its roots around the core of the earth in order to hold that tree strong and steady just because of its enormous size, right? But did you know just as the opposite with the redwood? You see, the roots of the redwood tree only grow about 5 feet deep into the ground. A tree that's 400 feet tall has roots that are only 5 feet deep into the ground. But what's special is that the roots of the redwood, instead of growing vertically downward, grows out laterally. It intertwines and it fuses with the tree of next to it, and the tree next to it, the tree next to it, and the tree next to it. So that now, instead of having a root system that only supports one individual tree, now you have this spiderweb complex root system that supports an entire forest that blankets most of Northern California. You see, that is what we need to be for our partners. You have to be more like a redwood tree. My relationship with Erica, my relationship with Sami as partners serving together in the same comm center, we need our roots to grow out laterally towards each other, intertwine and fuse, so that when the moment comes, I am there to support each of you, just like you are there to support me. That's what we need to be for each other as dispatchers. Be more like a redwood tree.
That's great.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's
And I
perfect.
think you need to make stickers. We love stickers, so you need to make stickers with some redwood trees on it. And
Be a redwood tree.
yep,
Redwood tree.
we love it. Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay,
Is that it?
that's it.
I guess we're done now. I'm just gonna give you guys all the information of where to find us. Facebook at Loveland Emergency Communication Center. You can find us on Instagram at How-To911 Podcast. You can email us any questions that you have, and if you have any questions for Ryan, we will make sure that he gets those so he can help answer them as well.
Yeah, we could have a future episode.
Yeah,
with
follow-up
viewer
questions.
questions.
And you can email those questions at howto911@cityofloveland.org. And then we have our YouTube at How-To911 Podcast. And next time we're going to be talking about something I'm not really too sure, but just
That'll
tune
be
in. Tune in for whenever the next episode is. So until then, I don't have a script in front of me.
You're doing great.
I'm doing so good.
You're so good.
So until then, know where you are, know your phone number, and tell us exactly what happened.
And cuts.